All right, I'm not sure what was going on there. Welcome, everybody. It's Mike Gastin. Great to have you along today. This is the Currency Podcast live stream on YouTube, and it's great to be here. Great to see some of the familiar faces showing up on the stream. Big shout out to Pauline, to George, to my good friend Saba, who is now Unity ECS. Great to see everybody. Thanks for joining today. I want to talk a little bit today about this idea of narrative, the power of story, the power of narrative. And I think this is an important topic, especially today. It's always been an important topic. I think it can apply in so many different ways. And but today I want to talk a little bit about narrative and spend a little bit of time there. So I hope if you're on the live stream, thanks for joining me today. Hey, Kristen, welcome. Great to see you. I want to just let folks know, some folks are watching this live, some will catch it later on. If you're listening to this later on, maybe you've been a long-time listener to the podcast, you can catch these as live streams now. I'm initially doing these on YouTube, then I port them over to the RSS feed, so you can still pick them up on Apple Podcasts. You can get them on Spotify, Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts, etc. You can get them anywhere. But the cool thing is if you want to take part in the community, you want to be part of the discussion, then you can jump on the live stream. Just subscribe to my channel. Just look for Mike Gastin on YouTube. And you can join in on the wacky madness and the fun. Now, today is episode number 50 of this podcast, which is really cool. I'm really happy to be able to put out my 50th. I did this podcast for a while, took a little bit of a break because I had to shift gears with my business and give it some attention. And I had a listener, actually a YouTube subscriber, suggest, hey, these live streams are great. Why don't you turn them into your podcast? And I was like, I hit myself in the forehead like, yeah, why don't I do that? So here I am. I want to say a couple more shout outs. ES911, great to see you. Tesla Dude, that's right. Popped $1,000 a share. Yeah, Musk is, he's doing it, isn't he? This is just a really strange time to be alive. It's like the best of times and the worst of times, as Dickens said in, was it The Tale of Two Cities? I don't remember. But yeah, some of you are commenting. You've noticed that my scene is different, the background. I changed my office around a little bit because I was just sick of having just a flat gray wall. I'm just going to fix my chair. I was sick of just having a flat gray wall behind me, and so I kind of reorganized things a little bit. The challenge for us is I'm sitting in a house that was built in the early 1800s. And so there's some acoustic issues here. There's some issues with the rooms, the way things are set up. It's a work in progress, but it is not an ideal recording or broadcasting studio. So we just do the best that we can. So guys, let's jump in today and talk a little bit about this concept of narrative, about story. Now, I don't know if you watch videos that I do, or maybe you've listened to some of my other podcast episodes. I talk about narrative from time to time. I talk about story. And in the work I do for clients as a branding strategist and as a consultant, I often get into narrative. And there's a thing about narrative that's kind of misunderstood or little understood, and it's kind of funny because it's such a powerful tool. I mean, narrative is such a powerful tool. And it's not surprising that people don't understand that aspect of it. But what's surprising to me is that we're surrounded by it. We are surrounded by narrative, and we don't give it a second thought. A lot of you folks watching and listening to this, you probably play video games. And if you do, then you know that, video games are really wrapped up around a narrative, around a story, usually playing through some kind of story. There's a backstory. There's a whole world that's created. I'm not a big video game player, but I know for a fact that the video game industry, which is multi-billions of dollars, bigger actually than Hollywood, if you can believe it, in gross revenue, that industry, it's highly narrative driven. And then we've got Hollywood, I just mentioned a moment ago. I mean, Hollywood is all about telling stories, all about narrative, multi-billion dollar industry. And not just the money that Hollywood makes, but think of the influence that Hollywood has over culture, over people, over the way that we think about things, the way that we view the world. It's all narrative. All that Hollywood is doing is telling stories. They're just telling stories, and that's what Hollywood's been doing now for generations. You want to look at things like social media. If you look at someone's Instagram page, they're creating a narrative about themselves. They're trying to present themselves in a certain light. They're using photography and settings and little video clips and stories to kind of present a narrative about who they are. It may or may not be true. I mean, it might not be a real narrative, but they're putting that out there. We've all heard about these influencers who look a certain way through the lens of Instagram, but then if you look at their personal lives, it's a shipwreck and quite troubling, actually. But that's not just true for Instagram. That's not just true for like, you go, well, Instagram's shallow. That's a bunch of shallow people on Instagram. It's true on LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn is another social media platform. It's focused mainly on business and professional pursuits. But I got to tell you, LinkedIn is all about narrative as well. The people that are using LinkedIn well are the ones that are crafting and publishing good narratives about who they are, their expertise, their experiences, what they would be like to work with. This is the world that we live in. So I said a little earlier, it's surprising how little we realize or understand the power of narrative, but we are surrounded. That's why I said surprising. We're surrounded by narrative. And it just doesn't end at gaming, Hollywood, and social media. You could say, well, I don't do any of those things. I don't watch movies. I'm not big into social media, and I'm not a gamer. So that doesn't really apply to me. But the fact of the matter is, it totally does. Political narratives are just overwhelming us these days, and not just one side or the other. It's not like, well, one side's putting these narratives out there, and the other side, they're the good guys. Like, each side has their narrative that they are putting out there and wanting people to believe and embrace. And if you look at things like the news media, and it doesn't have to be one of the big three. I love to pick on the mainstream media, and they deserve it. They really do. But it can be anybody. I mean, you get narrative overwhelming us through the media, through government, through political discussions and dialogues, through major institutions like educational institutions, through religion. You get narrative through our entertainment and our arts and our culture and so on. I mean, narrative is just a powerful part of our lives, and we don't realize it. Now, there's a reason that this is important. You can go, okay, great. I mean, everybody's out there promoting their ideas. Everybody's out there promoting their stories. What's the big deal? And there's a reason. Now, before I get to that reason, I just want to look at a couple of the comments here. So Pauline, I'm just going to add this here up on the screen. Pauline says, "A Lonely Girl was the OG of fake YouTube narrative." Gosh, that's true. I'd never got into the whole Lonely Girl thing, but I remember seeing that when it kind of hit, like this whole Lonely Girl. And isn't she the one that kind of disappeared for a while and people were terrified of what's happened to her? But it was a whole fake, made up, it was like a manufactured story. It wasn't even a real person's story. It was just this kind of acted out, seemingly real, some kid in their bedroom vlogging to the internet, and became a huge sensation. Junaid, welcome. He says, "What's the story, Morning Glory?" Yeah, you got it. I was almost going to put that as the title. I put "What's the Story" as our title for today's podcast episode. I almost put Morning Glory on there as well. I didn't want, who is it, Oasis? I'm not sure what band that was that had that title, their song. So, yeah, Pauline says, "Leaf is better than nothing. My first electric will be Leaf because Teslas are too much for me." Okay, so there's a discussion going on because Tesla hit $1,000. A discussion going on the side here with between Pauline and I think Christian. So anyway, Pauline says it's Oasis. Yes, I believe you're right. I thought it was Oasis. I loved that band back in the 90s. We lived in Cape Town in the 90s, and I loved Oasis. I listened to Wonderwall. That was like huge song. Junaid says, "Hey, Mike Gastin, I'm recording some podcast intros too." Awesome. So anyway, let me jump back in. So why is it so important? If narrative is all around us, and I'm saying, we don't realize how important this is. Well, why is it so important? There are all kinds of things that are all around us. We don't have to fear them. Are we supposed to fear narrative? Why is narrative so important to pay attention to? And here's why. There's something very interesting about human beings when it comes to narrative. And that is that we are biologically, you can either say we're designed, you can say we've evolved this way, however you want to look at it. The fact is that human beings are wired for story. We're physiologically wired for story. There's something called neural coupling. And there was a study done back in the early 2000s, I want to say. I forget the gentleman who did the study. I've read some of the work and looked it up. But long and short of it is that when they did studies where they would scan human brains and they would put them through these tests and they would have people tell stories. And as they were telling a story, they had a listener, someone that was listening to the story, and they would have their their brain rather wired too, and they were able to watch the areas of the brain that would light up with activity, with electrical activity, fire up, as a person's telling a story and as a person is listening to that same story. Now, here's a really fascinating thing that would happen. They called it neural coupling. What happens is when I give you a bunch of facts, data points, hey, 15% of Americans are bald and have white beards, which that's probably not a true fact. I mean, I know at least I am bald and have a white beard. But, if I throw some data point out there, you're never going to remember that. You're going to go away from this and go, yeah, I don't know, you said something about bald Americans. I don't remember. But if you tell a story around it, it's so much more memorable. And it has to do with this neural coupling. You see, when I tell you a fact, it's just a piece of data. But when I tell you a story, what happens is when I relate a story to you, I tell you, yeah, I was speeding down the road. I was going through the hills, backcountry roads. Beautiful day. It was so sunny, blue skies. I just had the tunes cranking. I was cranking Oasis. Wonderwall was on the radio. And I was going like 85 miles an hour in a 45 mile an hour zone. And then out of nowhere, like I don't know where this cop was, but he came out of nowhere and he pulled me over. And I was like, oh, shoot. And I was sick to my stomach because I had no money. This was a borrowed car. I didn't even know where the registration was. I'm thinking, this guy looks angry. I'm watching him kind of walk up behind me. As I'm going through this story, I'm first of all feeling that elation, that sunshine. I'm kind of remembering it. And my mind as the teller is reliving that story as if it really happened. It's like I'm going through it again. My emotions are starting to engage. I'm remembering the thoughts, the smells, the feeling, the warmth of the sun. Then as soon as I see that cop, as I'm telling you that story, my stomach's tightening up a little bit. All this stuff is going on in my physiology as the teller because I experienced this thing. Here's the fascinating thing about neural coupling. The listener, we have found, their brain starts to synchronize with the teller's brain. When you tell a story, the listeners to your story their brains will start to sync up with yours. And if one part of your brain is firing as you're remembering that beautiful blue sky and the warm sunshine and the tunes cranking in the car, what will happen is the listener will have a sympathetic reaction. The same part of their brain will fire up. So what happens is we create this level of sympathy between a storyteller and a story listener, someone receiving the story. And for some reason, we're physiologically wired that we start to get in sympathy with each other as this story is being told. We experience the story along with the teller. We don't just hear it as facts. We experience it on a level that nothing else does for human beings. This is why you watch a movie and you get really wound up in the movie. Have you ever caught yourself in the middle of a movie and you're like, you could hardly breathe, you're tense, and some of that's the music, some of that's the staging and the lighting. There's ways that, storytellers can manipulate us. But it's that sympathy. You're forgetting that you're watching a movie. You're forgetting that you're looking at a glowing screen. You're forgetting that these are actors, that this is fake, that this never happened. And even if it's a true story that you're watching, it's not a documentary. You're watching people reenact it. Why do we jump when the boogeyman jumps out of the closet with a knife? Why do we get so elated and happy when the bad guy finally gets defeated? Why are we angry when this one character kind of does something behind the protagonist's back? Why do we feel incensed and outraged at these things when there's an injustice? These are all just fake. These are actors in movie sets. These are video games. These are television shows, but somehow we get sucked in. It's that neural coupling. There's this sympathy, that happens between the teller of the story and the listener. And we can't help ourselves. We can't, you sit there, I've done this before. I get choked up. I'm watching a movie with my wife, and I get a little knot in my throat over some poignant moment. We kind of joke about it a little bit. But I get choked up. I'm this big guy or whatever, but I get choked up at some moment. I'm sitting there looking at her going, it's just a stupid movie. I can hardly squeak the words out. I know it's a movie, but at the same time, I'm all choked up. I'm emotional. Why is that? I can't help it because I'm physiologically wired this way, and everybody is. So when you think about the power of narrative, And you think about what that means when you realize how much it affects us. I mean, think for yourself. Have you watched a movie? Have you read a book where you couldn't put the book down? It's because it's a great story. What is it that makes it? It's entertaining, yes. But it's not just that it's entertaining, it's that you're in synchronicity. That's not the right word probably, but you're synchronized with this story. And you're feeling it as you're reading it, as you're observing it, as you're hearing it. This is why we love these podcasts that tell a story. That NPR one, if I could only remember it. It was about the kid that was accused of murder, and they went through the whole case. I can't remember. It was huge. Anyway, story's big. So if you think about that grip that story has on us, and then you back up a little bit to what I was talking about just a few moments before, which was that we are surrounded by narratives. You start to realize the import of what's going on potentially to you and around you. You start to realize that I might be being manipulated and influenced by all these people telling their stories. Now you say, well, yeah, like not everything's a narrative. Like the political guys, that's not a narrative, or the news, that's not narrative. Yes, when I watch a Hollywood movie, that's a narrative, that's a story. But that's not necessarily true. These narratives can be subtle. These narratives can draw us in, and we don't even realize that we're part of a story. So let me give you an example. With the recent COVID crisis, there's been a lot of narratives that have hit the ground. We've heard a lot of narratives, but you remember one. I'll bring one up. And it feels like it was a year ago. It was only a handful of weeks ago, but this is the power of these things. One of the narratives, at least in the U.S., we were told, and a lot of us, I think most of us embraced initially, was that we have to flatten the curve. The initial narrative, but one of the initial narratives around this whole COVID and the reaction was that we have to flatten the curve. The story was, look, this thing it's a virus. It's going to make its way through the world. We can't stop it. But what we have to do, because it's so aggressive and it hits so many people, is we have to flatten the curve. And we have to say, look, we can't have everybody getting sick at once. It wasn't that we're going to avoid everybody getting sick. That was never part of the deal at the beginning. The story, the narrative was, we've got to slow this thing down so that only a handful of people are sick at any given time, so that our healthcare systems aren't overwhelmed. We don't want people dying on the streets. We don't want people stacked up in the hallways of the hospitals without the ability to get a bed, and they can't breathe and they're just dying everywhere. There was a narrative that was created, and we embraced it. Now, it's not necessarily wrong. It wasn't, I don't know. I'm not saying that was a fake narrative or a false narrative. I'm just saying that was a narrative, and we looked at that, we thought that makes sense. There was sympathy between the tellers of that narrative and the people listening. They got us. They said, yep. And we said, yep, and let's do it. So we banded together. We said, let's shut some stuff down. Let's shut down as much as we can. Unessential business, which I've had a real issue with that concept. We put tens of millions of Americans, this is just America, I'm talking about people all over the world, but tens of millions of Americans out of work. We've destroyed businesses. We've destroyed our GDP. We've just devastated the country. And don't think that some of these riots, et cetera, aren't an outpouring of some of the frustration that came out of that. This isn't just like straight out, cop, brutality. These narratives are feeding each other. But anyway, I'm getting off track. We all did this based on the narrative. What you notice, if you look kind of through the media history, is that narrative changed, but they never came out and said, hey, wait a minute. They just changed the narrative. The politicians, the healthcare experts, it went from being, we've got to flatten the curve. And this podcast isn't about criticizing. Today's episode is not about criticizing the handling of Corona. I'm just using this. It's such a recent, fresh example. I want to just use this to show you the power of this narrative and how they change things so that you're aware. So we've got to flatten the curve. Everyone said, okay, great, we get it. Let's flatten the curve. Then it looked like the curve was flattening. And then when we were all like, hey, looks like it's flattening, can we start opening up? The narrative shifted to, I don't think we can open until we've got vaccines. And the narrative shifted to, we're going to beat this thing. It went from we've got to flatten the curve to this is a war and we're fighting an enemy and we've got to beat this enemy. And so it's going to take everything we've got to beat this enemy. We're at war. We're going to defeat it. We're going to win. That's a different narrative. You go from accepting the virility of this sickness and its ability to go across the population and our inability to stop it from doing that. So we said, okay, let's slow it down. That was one narrative. And we all knew that we were going to get exposed, and we were all hoping that we were going to be safe. It was a little scary. I think all of us were thinking, like, am I going to make it? You know, if I get this, hey, I'm a graybeard. If I get this, am I going to make it? To now, the narratives have blown up. It went from that to being a war. Now it's that we have to get vaccines for everybody. And then the other narrative is like, this is a bunch of BS. This thing was never even a thing. Like, oh, this isn't real. Let's hit the beaches and party it up. And so it's been, if you look at just this one example, that's an example of narrative and how it is so powerful. And what you'll find, and I'm sure if you think about some of the interactions you've had with folks, if you're talking to people and you just bring up COVID, each one of them will present to you one of the narratives that they've kind of latched onto. There's some people still talking about flattening the curve. And they're acting today. You know, we're like 2-3 months into this thing and they're like, hey, I thought we were flattening the curve. Like they're just figuring out that that's not happening, right? So there's some people that have embraced one narrative. You'll find other people are like still going around wearing a mask and terrified to be near anybody in public because they're waiting for a vaccine. So people are embracing different narratives. And, you know, this is the power. That's just one example. So if you talk to people today, you'll notice that they're not all embracing the same narrative. And what happened to the old story? What happened to the flattening the curve? It just kind of disappeared. No one seemed to really address it, and we just moved on. Let me look at a few comments here, and we'll just keep going. But we've got Ara's in the house. Welcome, Ara. Let's see. So Christian Frederico says, yeah, true, but most good storytellers are naturals. But yeah, anything can be learned. So Christian was saying earlier, I think in the comments, Christian was saying that he wanted to learn to be a good storyteller. I think you can learn that. I think that storytelling, I think people are gifted as storytellers. There's some people that are gifted. And I have a little bit of Irish heritage, not a lot, but a little bit of Irish heritage. And the Irish, just as a group of people, take pride in the fact that they know how to spin a tale. I mean, there are some just nationalities that are proud of their storytelling capabilities, and the Irish would be one of them, great storytellers. But I would like to argue that storytelling and creating narrative is a craft, and that it can be learned, and it's a skill. It's not so much a gift. It helps to be a gifted writer. It helps to be a gifted speaker, all those things. But gifts only take you so far. It's really about the hard work. If you're interested at all, this is for anybody, in narrative, in the power of narrative, I would highly recommend reading Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. Now, it is a bit of an academic book. It's a bit dense. And Campbell's a Gnostic. I am not a Gnostic, so I don't agree with his worldview for the most part, the spiritual worldview that he has. But boy, does he nail it on the head when it comes to narrative and the power of narrative. And he gets at kind of the root of mankind's storytelling and mankind's penchant for telling stories. And he finds these commonalities across so many cultures. And what he ends up doing is he breaks down the key pieces, the core characters, the core drivers of narratives that have been with mankind for centuries, for millennia. So if you're interested at all in becoming a great storyteller, it's a little bit of work. I'm not going to lie. Campbell's book is a little bit of work. But if you enjoy digging in and going kind of deep with something, I couldn't recommend The Hero with 1,000 Faces more. So that's that. Let's see. Ara says, it's a philosophical human parallel, totally known by the movie makers. It absolutely is. They've figured out the power of narrative, and they I mean, The Lion King, some of these, you just look at some of these stories, and they've got the classic, human story that Campbell has uncovered as its structure, and it's quite powerful. Unity ECS says, you're pointing to the core issues. Thank you, man. George is saying they told us the same story about COVID here in Europe. Yeah, that's right. I mean, this was definitely a conversation all across the world. And Pauline says, yeah, she thinks it was a story that was told by the WHO, the World Health Organization. Caleb Olson, welcome to the podcast, Caleb. Framing was a huge part of my marketing classes. Even your prices tell a story about your company. Now, see, Caleb, you get a prize here, buddy. I mean, there's no prize, but you get a prize because This is an important thing. People hear narrative and they think explicit narrative, meaning someone told a story. There was a protagonist, there was an antagonist, there was a problem. The protagonist, accepted the call to adventure. The protagonist overcame, and in the end won this boon for society. Like there's this three-part play that takes place. Often narrative can be subtle. It doesn't have to be as explicit as someone telling you a story. So to Caleb's point, even your pricing, the way that you price your products kind of tells a story about that. Let me give you an example. And this shows up in one of my older videos I did on pricing strategy. Let's say you've got, I'll give you an example for me. So we sit on a property I like to refer to as Gastin Manor. It's about 5 acres. And about just over half of that acreage is lawn that needs to be mowed. And I've got a pretty good-sized 52-inch, I don't know what that is in metric, so I apologize. I only know what it is in bald eagle. And 52-inch mower, it's got a 0 turn, so you can do these quick radius turns, and it's just great. I just finished actually mowed the lawn. But about 2 weeks ago, one of the belts snapped on that mower, and it took me weeks to get that stupid belt fixed. I am not mechanical. I have office worker hands here, and it just took a while. And it's not necessarily a fault of my own. The thing's engineered in a way that you have to have the tiny little fingers of a child to get in there and do half the things I had to do to get this thing fixed. But I want to talk about lawnmowers. Let's say you need to go to the store and get a new lawnmower. Your lawnmower breaks down, and you just want to push more. You don't need $5,000 mower. So you show up at your hardware store, whether it's Home Depot, Lowe's, wherever you shop, Canada Tire. You go to get a mower. Now you got 2 lawnmowers. They look the same. One of them's priced at $200 and one of them's priced at $50. But they look exactly the same. They look the same. If you see that one for $50, you can't help but look at it and think something's got to be wrong with this mower. Why is it priced so low? Now, you didn't go in knowing what mowers were going to even cost. It's not like you have an opinion on what they should cost. And the mowers seem the same. They've got the same specifications, the same abilities, etc. The fact of the matter is the $50 mower could be better built. There could be some reason that they priced it. Maybe the $200 mower is actually gouging you. But the story here is that $50 is telling you a story. Now, they didn't mean to tell you, but what they're saying to you is it's inexpensive. It's cheap. They must have cut corners somewhere. And it may not be the case, but the narrative that pricing creates in your mind is actually quite powerful. And what you'll find is most people will buy the $200 mower. Often you'll see pricing strategies online, and this is about the narrative, but you'll see these subscription services where it's $10 a month for professional, and then it's $50 a month for ultra pro, and it's $100 a month for enterprise. And usually people pick the middle, like they don't usually pick the cheapest one. They usually go for the middle option. That really high price is there just to kind of make you feel better about the one you're going to pick. But these prices tell us a story. And so to, Mr. Olson, what's your first name? I got to find you again in the Caleb's point. There's so many things that tell a story. You go to your website, the photographs, the headlines, the colors, the fonts, if you have video, it all lends itself to telling a story about your business. So narrative is really, really powerful. By the way, Proed Jansen said, sorry, just came home from dinner with friends. Proed, no apologies, my friend. If you can get out for dinner with friends, that's much more important than looking at me on a live stream. Oh, I got to put this one up. This is my little brother. Brian says, what's up, bro? Hey, buddy, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining the stream. And so George says, Mike 2020, that's the solution. I'm flattered. I've said before in other podcasts, I'd be a wonderful dictator. I'd make the world a better place. It would only take me about 10, 20 years, but it'd be beautiful. It'd be a beautiful thing. We'd have to outlaw protest and dissident because, of course, my leadership would be glorious, and any type of protest or complaint would be a crime against the universe. All right, so Pauline Weinberger says, in Canada, Trudeau just wants to rule like a dictator, so he says that Parliament can't reopen yet because it's too dangerous. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. Like, let's talk about the dangerous story. I mean, That's a narrative. That's a story that people, oh, it's too dangerous. Is it too dangerous? It may be. It may not be. These are narratives. And we use these narratives in so many ways. I think what's important for us is to realize that we're being told stories all the time, and to realize that we're wired to be sympathetic to stories. It's dangerous. Now, what can you do? You're going to put yourself in a lead box so that the secret government mind control waves can't get to you. I mean, you can't live this world without encountering narrative. And narrative is not bad. Being influenced by a story is not bad. That can be entertaining, and it can be a powerful way to learn things. It can be a way that you grow as a human being. And it can be a way that you're able to communicate your ideas to other people. Story is not necessarily bad. What concerns me is that people just don't seem to realize that they're influenced by these narratives. One narrative right now that is so frustrating to me, and tell me if you've heard this one, but there's this narrative out there that, the new normal, like that's the narrative, the new normal, and that's a story that now that we've gone through this thing, normal's never going to be what it was like before. Now, that might be a true statement. That might be true. I'm not here to argue that, oh, trust me, everything's going to go back to the way it was before. I get that. But I feel like this is being used as a narrative tool, as a way to kind of get sympathy with folks so that we're more willing to accept these new things. It's like if you start to embrace the concept that a new normal is inevitable, there's just nothing you can do about it. Well, then who's defining what that new normal is? Who gets to say what that new normal is? Who gets to tell us what our lives will look like and won't look like in the future? So, some things that we kind of like about the new normal. Hey, I'm going to get to work from home more often. That's a cool new normal. Most people can get on with that. It's like, yeah, I like that. But then you've got people saying, well, you're going to have to give up more of your privacy. You're going to have to give up, your constitutional rights in America or Europe or Canada because, hey, a lot of people almost died from this virus, and this is just the new normal. So these narratives are used in very subtle ways, very powerful ways. So I just would encourage you, resist them. Don't reject every narrative you hear or see, but understand that it's a narrative. Understand that you're being told a story, and think about that. Like, step back a little bit and think about that and say, okay, if I'm being told a story right now, what is the story all about? What's the moral of the story? How does this story end? What's in it for me? Will the story cost me something? Is this a cost I'm willing to pay? And what effect is this story having on my thinking and on my feelings? I think that's one of the most important things to consider. What is this story? What kind of effect is this story having on my thinking and on my feelings? Because this is the thing, and why narrative, I think, is so popular. When you can get people fearful, when you can get them angry, when you can get people unsettled, when you can get them disturbed, you can get them to do things that they typically wouldn't do. Look, as a father, now my children are all adults right now, but if my children were younger, I like to think of myself as an honest, truthful, law-abiding person. I'm not perfect. I've told lies. I've done some things in life that I'm not proud of. Nothing that I'm like horribly, but I've done some things that I'm ashamed of. I'm a human being. I've made mistakes. I know, internet, don't fall apart. It's a shocker. But if I think about, like, if you were to come to me and if my children were starving, I'd be willing to steal if I had to feed them. Like, I'd be willing to do things that I wouldn't typically do if I were under duress. That's not to say that I'm willing to do anything. I have no morals. I just wouldn't let my kids starve. If I had to risk me getting in trouble, I'd steal a little bit of bread if that's what I had to do to feed my kids. Now, fortunately, I haven't had to do that, but some people have. So think about the emotional duress that people get under during under a powerful narrative. You get people wound up. You get them fearful about Muslims, or you get them fearful about Christians, or you get them fearful about sick people, or you get them fearful about Chinese people, or you get them fearful about American people, you get them fearful about the Democrats or fearful about the Republicans. When you get people wound up about skin colors and religions and belief systems, etc., when you get them scared and angry, you're able to get them to do things that they wouldn't normally do. we like to tell ourselves that like, oh, the Germans, the Nazis, the Germans, they were so bad. They were like somehow the Germans are different than us. What happened in Nazi Germany somehow could never happen somewhere else. Why not? What is so different about any other race? Are the Germans uniquely flawed as a human race, as a nationality, as a genetic group? I don't think so. I think they're similar to the rest of us. I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, brown, doesn't matter. I think we all have this capability of doing things that we wouldn't normally do when we're excited, when we're angry, when we're fearful, when we're under a lot of duress. And these narratives, because they pull on our emotions, because they affect our emotions so much, because they create this sympathy between us and the person that's telling the story, they get us wound up. They get us physiologically reacting. You can get goosebumps, you get knots in your stomach, you can get elation, you can cry, you can laugh. All these things happen when we engage a story. And these can be very powerful. So sure, in an explicit story like a movie or some political rhetoric, look at what happened to Rwanda. That political rhetoric led to genocide and bloodshed. So am I gloom and doom? No, I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to do is say, hey, you've got to be aware of this. Now, in marketing, we use narrative all the time. But I try to use it in a way that's moral and ethical and respectful. And my kind of undergirding principle as a marketer when it comes to things like narrative, because in marketing, it's too easy to just manipulate people to get them to do what you want. It's like your job to do that. My underlying kind of principle is that each individual is an end unto themselves. What I mean by that is you are not an end to my means. If I'm trying to accomplish something, you're not there as a means to my end. I think I said that backwards a second ago. You're not some tool that gets me what I want. You're not some resource that I'm able to consume to get what I want at the end of the day. You're not there so that I can just use you to make money, to sell my product, et cetera. I've got to recognize, and as a Christian, I do this because I say, look, I understand every human being is made in God's image. So for me, in my theological view of the world, yours may be quite different if you have a theological view of the world, but mine is that if you bear God's image, that makes you sacred. So every human being doesn't need a justification. They don't need a reason to be respected. I'm not talking about day-to-day. If somebody's rude to me, I've got no problem saying I don't respect that person. That doesn't mean that I'm going to punch their teeth in. But they bear God's image. They're not mine to manipulate. They're not there for me to use. It's not like a hammer where I go, I've got to pound a nail, let me grab a hammer. I'm not manipulating, disrespecting, denigrating the image of God when I grab a hammer to drive a nail. The hammer has no mind. It has no say in the matter. Maybe the hammer doesn't want to be used tough. I'm using it because it's just a tool. But for people, for human beings, as a marketer, I approach it as saying, look, every person is an end unto themselves because they bear God's image. And so it's not right. It's immoral for me to do something that's manipulative. So what I do, I sometimes turn work away because some projects are like, look, this doesn't line up for me morally and ethically. And in other instances where it's fine, it's like I'm just trying to help connect good people to good products. I tell the story. I tell the truth. I tell it in a way that's evocative and interesting, engaging. You tell it in a way that's transparent, and people go, wow, I love this product. The Hammer, Pauline says, Hammer just left the chat. That's great. Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Good one, Pauline. Hammer has left the chat. Sorry, Hammer, you don't get a say in this. We got nails to drive here. So anyway, that's my take on it. Hopefully that's useful to you guys. This is talking a little bit about, it's more like a warning. You have to be careful. There's so much to narrative, and I love narrative. I got to tell you, I do brand story and a lot of branding work that includes narrative. It's powerful. Again, I can't recommend enough Joseph Campbell's The Hero of a Thousand Faces, just a fantastic piece of work. And there's a bunch of other books around that kind of take Campbell's work and apply it a little more. I don't even know if you need to go to the other books. I think Campbell's good enough. Let's look at some of the comments here. We've got some stuff going on about Brave New World. I won't jump that. I think there was some... So Dale Spoonley says, hey, Mike, hello from Ireland. Hey, awesome. Do you think the news channels are biased in how they create the favored narrative? thus influence different people in different ways. Dale, no question for me. I think that they are biased. Yes, I totally think they're biased. And now, I don't think that every news channel is biased in the same way. But if we want to get into this, and I think there's been a shift. There was a time when journalism was about reporting the facts, and I think there was a bit of a kind of a code of honor where the journalist is like, look, it's not my job to influence the reader and what they think. I'm supposed to be objective. Now, there have been periods of time like the muckrakers back in American history, where they told these sensational stories and they were manipulative back in the day. It's probably like the early 1900s, I want to say. I don't remember exactly. But I think for the most part, there was like a professional agreement amongst journalists that you're supposed to dig down and expose the truth. You're supposed to expose the truth, just to share the facts. You're not supposed to craft a narrative, but you're supposed to expose the truth. And what's happened is, and I don't know when it happened because I'm not an expert on this. I'm sure there's like an intellectual historian that could give us the background on this. But what happened is that at some point, journalism became about achieving a certain end. It's not so much about exposing the truth, but it's about helping create a certain kind of world. Now, progressivism is really big on progressing towards this type of utopia, that the world's not good enough the way it is, and that mankind can make it better. And there are various degrees and levels of this, but progressivism is all about creating a certain kind of world. It's not about democracy. It's not about liberty. It's not about the freedom to do what you think you want to do. It's about creating a certain kind of society, a global society. And I feel like a lot of the educational institutions, a lot of the J schools, the journalism schools, universities have embraced progressivism. A lot of the staff, faculty are progressives, and avowedly so. This isn't a hidden thing. And so to your question, I think that a lot of these students are coming through and being educated and propagandized, in my opinion, to use journalism as a tool for progressivism. Now, you can get other news channels and stations and systems, broadcast entities that are all about conservatism or right-wing politics, and they'll try to use it for their end. So something happened. I'm not a professional in this area. I don't know what happened when, but there's been a shift in my lifetime where journalism and broadcast media is being used towards an end as opposed to just saying it's our job to expose the truth. Now, in a democracy, the concept is like a good democracy only works if your population is educated. You have to have a well-informed population for democracy to work. Otherwise, they're at risk of being manipulated by people who are really good at telling strong narratives, spinning strong stories, a lot of charisma. Now, some people go, oh my gosh, that's Donald Trump. I think you could say the same about the left. I think the left and the right are both battling for power. So a good democracy relies on a highly informed, well-educated population. And that's where the journalism piece of it comes in, because the media, newspapers, journalists, et cetera, their job was to make sure that people were informed. But what they've been doing on both sides, I think the progressives do this more because they control more of the media than the conservatives do. But what the progressives have been doing is using it to win their fight. I mean, from the day that Donald Trump won office, you can think what you want of the guy. You can hate him, whatever, but like from the day he won office, I don't think there was any kind of unbiased coverage of him in the media for the most part. And what I mean by that isn't to say everything's a lie and it's fake news. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you look at the way the headlines were even written. It's very rare to just see kind of a piece that's not taking a side. The language in the headlines, the language in the story is letting you know the journalist or the author's position on Donald Trump just in general as a person and as a president. So it's next to impossible to just get media that's unbiased. I just want to hear what really happened. I don't need to hear all the pejoratives and the descriptive adverbs and adjectives that kind of slant the story one way or the other. I don't need to know that all these things that kind of qualify and color the picture. Just tell me what happened. Was the vote up or down? But you don't get that information anymore. So that's my long answer to your short question, but yes. Yeah, hey, what is up, my friend? It's been a while from my friend Abdesamad. Abdesamad. I don't know if I'm saying your name right. I try each time. It's great to see you. Thanks for joining me on the podcast. It's going really well. Thanks. I want to see what Unity says here. He says, I just clicked on George. Mike 2020, I will steal your vote only if I have to. That's right. I'll only do what's necessary for the greatness of my government. And Unity says, I think we can all do as individuals is to save our souls from the devil of narratives. Yeah, look, I mean, narratives are a good thing too. I don't want to. There's a reason I think that we're wired for story, and I think a good story with good intentions, good morals, good ethics, they're powerful. I mean, this is the reason that through the centuries before mankind even had writing, that narratives were so important. That's why we look to bards and storytellers to help us remember our history, to remember our culture, to remember those that went before us and the great deeds that they committed to help establish. I think of the Greeks like Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey. These were originally, verbal stories that were handed down generation to generation. So, story is a good thing. It's a great way to communicate information. But unfortunately, people use them to manipulate and to control. And that's the thing. My big thing, and it's a theme I just keep coming back to on these live streams and in this podcast on this channel, is I want people to be able to live their life on their own terms. I want you to be able to live your life on your own terms. And that means that I want to help you shed some of these things that hang on you and I, that try to manipulate us, that try to color our view, that try to make us do and think and say in ways that we wouldn't necessarily do on our own. So that's it. So Abdesamad says, all right, you just pronounced right for the first time. Ha, ha, ha. So I've got to practice this. Abdesamad. I don't know if I'm I'm not confident with these name pronunciations. I apologize, guys. But I am grateful you're here, so thank you. So that's my take on narrative today. Spend a little bit of time, look around, and you'll see it's just a really powerful thing. And, be careful, think about it, but also be thinking about how you can be using narrative for yourself. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap up the podcast, but I'm going to keep the live stream going for a little while here and answer some questions. So what I'm going to do is just wrap up the podcast real quick by saying, guys, thank you so much for listening today. I'm grateful that you're part of this audience. If you want to, please subscribe. You can find this podcast on YouTube. As I said at the beginning, you can also find it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere that fine podcasts are provided. Please know that I love you guys, and I'll catch you in the next episode. All right, now let's keep this live stream going for a little bit here. I'd love to answer some questions. I'm just going to go through, as I've been doing more of a topical discussion, it's harder for me to just look at some of these comments and be able to respond. So let's jump back in. Pauline says, the news channel is beholden to its owners, so Wall Street Journal is beholden to Bezos, etc. Yeah, that's true. Pauline says, okay, now that they are gone, all right, guys, let's talk about a secret. Yeah, I don't know, I'm experimenting with this, right? I don't know how much someone listening to the podcast wants to hear me reading and responding to comments, and how much they enjoy that. It's just not clear to me. I don't know. So I'll have to experiment with this. Maybe I just keep doing these and I don't edit. I don't end it for one. Just keep it the same for everybody. Dale says, we have a saying here in Ireland, why let the truth get in the way of a good story? That's right, Dale. Dale, I don't know if you were in the podcast a little earlier. I was talking about storytelling, and I said, I think the Irish people, and I've got a little bit of Irish heritage. My mother's maiden name is Hallahan, but you wouldn't know by looking at me. My father's Lebanese, was Lebanese, and my mother's Irish. But anyway, I said the Irish people are known for being great storytellers. So Dale, I don't know if you agree with that or not, but I think the Irish people are known for being great storytellers. Not only after having a couple pints, but there's some amazing Irish authors that they've written some amazing, amazing novels. Of course, live, I'm not thinking of some of the names, and my mother would kill me for not being able to rattle off a couple names, but yeah. So, Digimax Photo, welcome. Has anyone seen Spike Lee, Da 5 Bloods? Thoughts? Now, I haven't seen it yet, but I have a buddy. His name is Shane. He's got a YouTube channel, SKB, SKB, and which is Sierra Kilo Bravo. So it's at Sierra Kilo Bravo, SKB. He did a review. He said it was terrible. He said it was just terrible. And he said the whole thing is supposed to be about Vietnam and some of these black fighters in Vietnam, the American black guys in Vietnam. And he said the whole thing was just like this screed. Every other sentence was a dig at Trump. It was just all about how Trump's terrible. It's just funny to me. I'm a little frustrated with Trump right now and his handling of what's going on with Black Lives Matter and the riots. I don't think he's I think he's a little tone deaf. I think he's missing a huge opportunity to really set himself apart. I think he's failing at that. But you can't tell me that Trump's responsible for Vietnam. I mean, come on, Spike, get over yourself. Like this is the narrative. Part of it is what narrative is Spike putting out there with the Five Bloods, but also what narrative has Spike embraced and what narrative lens is he looking at the world through that he can't get past Trump and do a piece of great art that has nothing to do with the president at any given time. It's just pathetic. George says, Mike, what do you think about the free zone in Seattle? You know, I really am frustrated by, I guess my question is like, what about private property? So George, you're a hotel owner, right? I think you're in Austria, if I remember correctly. And, what if somebody decided they were just going to take over the section where your hotel is based? All of a sudden they're dancing, even if they're not riding, they're dancing in the streets, they're blasting music, they're doing drugs, they're protesting, they're marching, they're ripping the street signs down, they're spray painting stuff. It's like, that's going to hurt your business. And I just, and the mayor of Seattle, she's like, oh, well, this is just, this is good. This is a protest. We do block parties. It's just a big block party. It's just a big celebration. It's really good. I'm like, lady, what planet are you on? You are in government to uphold the kind of way that our society works, and private property is a big part of that. So, George, I have to put this up here. Sorry, Georgia. George says, I would get a gun, simply as that. I think you've got the right answer, George. But here's the problem. I mean, let's say you got a gun. Let's say you had to use it. Now you've killed somebody. Now you go to prison because everyone's going to say, hey, these riots were important and this white guy killed these poor people. Now you're going to go to jail for protecting your own property. And if you don't go to jail, they're going to put you through a year or two of hell in court and legal fees, and it'll ruin you. Why? All because you're trying to protect your private property. And you shouldn't have to do that because the mayor and the people that have been voted in and entrusted with the public well-being are not doing their job. They're not willing to say, hey, you can say, let's protest, let's change the government, let's change the police force, etc. But let's also respect our neighbors. Poor George in his hotel, he didn't do anything to you guys. So this whole occupation thing, it's a LARP. It's a big LARP. And it's not based in reality. I'm not sure in what world these people think that this all works. Like, you take it over. Now what? By the way, I just have to say real quick, hello to Lars Christian Strahlberger. Did I say that right, Christian? But welcome. He says, good evening and greetings from Germany. Lars, please forgive me for my pathetic American inability to pronounce anyone's name that doesn't sound like Smith, Jones, or Miller. Oh my gosh, I'm so bad at this. But yeah, that whole free zone is it's a joke. But what's more upsetting, I guess there are two things. First of all, what bothers me is where are all these people coming from that have the time to occupy some chunk of a city for days and potentially weeks on end? I go back to the Occupy Wall Street movement. Where do all these people come from? Why are they not working jobs? And these don't look like people that are coming, like the people I'm seeing don't look like people that are economically disadvantaged. They don't look like they're coming out of the ghettos like, look, I grew up without a mother or father. I don't have an opportunity. I just want the opportunity to work a job. I want the opportunity to live a life and be happy. These look like a bunch of suburban, spoiled, rotten, white kid brats that just don't appreciate anything. They're angry at the world. They want to smash everything. They're so idealistic, like nothing's fair. Everything's institutionally terrible. We got to burn it all to the ground. It's like they took a few classes in community college and some communist professor filled their head with ideological Marxism, and they're now in the world going, everything should be free. There should be no such thing as private property. Why can't I do whatever I want? But it's totally unworkable. It's just not how the universe works. And it's just so funny. So yeah, I have a real problem. So there's that issue. And then secondly, where's the government? Where's the government saying, hey guys, you can't do this. Let's work out our differences in a way that's not destructive and is respectful to the other people in the city. You're not the only people in the city. The city is comprised of millions of people, and we've got to find ways that work for everyone, not just you. Just because you demand, now you're going to take it over. I don't know, but you know what? Seattle's kind of crazy like that. Like that is Seattle. So I don't know what to tell you there. Okay, let's see here. Abdes Ahmad says, Abdes Ahmad. I don't know why I struggle with that, Abdes Ahmad. I just joined. I'm not sure about what you guys are talking about, but I have a question I would like to ask you. Oh, let me get that back up there again. Asked you a long while ago, Mike, is it important to do something you love if you want to be successful? I know I'm out of topic. No, you are not out of topic. And in fact, in my latest video, not the live stream, but the latest video that I put up just last week, I talked about that. So I have an opinion on this. I think it's not critical to find something you love. I think that love is a feeling. And sometimes let's talk about a relationship. Let's say you're in love with a person, a man or a woman. Sometimes you're going to feel like you're in love with them. Other times you're not going to feel like you love them. But what creates a deep love between the two of you is that through those good feelings and those bad feelings and those missing feelings, because you go through different times, different stages, different moments, that you act in ways that are loving, that you serve one another, that you're gracious to one another, that you're kind to one another, that you cover one another's faults and weaknesses, that you don't expose each other, berate each other, and break each other down. Now, you can do that when you feel in love and when you don't feel in love. And trust me, I'm going somewhere with this. When you do that over time, what you build is this deeper sense of love for one another and trust and affection and appreciation. This is why as we get older and wrinkled, if we have the blessing to be able to stay in a marriage for any period of time, that we find each other actually more attractive when we become physically less attractive, because your love has, yes, Pauline says slow music starts playing. Pauline, you're in rare form today, my friend, but this is true. Just hang in there with me. And then Lara says, love is when you don't kill her because you would miss her. See, that's exactly it. Where I'm going with this is, though, that you guys are killing me. This is great. That love is a feeling, and people make the mistake saying, well, I want to find work that I love. And I think what they're saying is not so much work that I'm willing to commit to over a long period of time, but work that makes me feel good, something I'm passionate about. And I think that Grady likes my shirt, by the way. Grady Beckel says, hey, nice shirt, love colored, cool. Yeah, pink. Only strong, confident men can wear pink. So I don't like this concept of giving people advice that you've got to get in. If you want to be successful in business, you should find something that you're passionate about, because those feelings come and go. Now, when you're married to someone or in a relationship, that's a human being. It's easier to hang in there through the tough times and the bad times. But when it's a business can't love you back. So if I'm sitting here and going, look, I'm committing to this wife of mine, and whether I feel like I love her or I don't, I know that she's going to be there for me. She's going to love me back. She's going to sacrifice for me. She's going to, help me, encourage me. She's going to hold me accountable when I'm not behaving the way I should be. And I'm going to do the same for her. It's reciprocal. But when you're trying to find a business that you love, the problem is the business will never love you back. The business is going to treat you like crap sometimes. The business is going to disappoint you. It's going to break your back. It's going to be painful and frustrating. And sometimes you're just going to want to get out. So finding a business that you love is not, I think, the secret to success. I think what is more important is finding a purpose. So if love is a feeling that comes from within, then purpose is something that's outside of us, not without us, but outside of us. I think it's more important to find a purpose. The cool thing about a purpose is when you think about love or passion, it's either on or off. You're either like you have passion or you don't. You're not like kind of passionate. If somebody says, I kind of am passionate about this, well, there's no such thing as kind of passionate. You're either passionate or you're not passionate. But to have a purpose doesn't have to be this massive overarching thing. You could have a life purpose. Some people do. I've got this mission. I'm on a mission. Some people have a purpose. You can have a purpose for the day. You can get out of bed and say, my purpose today is. You can set your mind to something. It's really just exercising your will. So can the purpose be money? He wants, Abdus Samad says. I mean, it can be. I think yes, absolutely. The purpose can be money. But I think you want to find a purpose that's greater than you. I think you want to find a purpose that stretches you, that causes you to become a better person. It doesn't have to be grand. Like I consult with privately owned businesses. So if we were going to slow music, now we're going to go to the marketing sales music, whatever that is. But I work with privately owned businesses. And my purpose for doing that, yes, I want to be free. I want to own my own business. I want to be able to do what I want to do. I want to make great money. My purpose, though, is because I believe in the power of small business to change lives. I know that these business owners employ people in their towns and cities and villages. And I know that when I help that small business grow his or her business, I'm helping them employ people. I'm helping them put kids through college. I'm helping them give their employees money so they can buy homes and take vacations. I know that my contribution is making people's lives better, even if it's a bit indirect. But I'm in there as a marketing guy. If I can help drive revenue, if I can help fix a problem that's holding the company back or develop a capability that the company didn't have before that allows it to market itself more successfully, get more customers, be more profitable, then I'm actually making a huge impact. So for me, that's a purpose. Money for me is a fruit. Like the tree is, the purpose is the tree, making the world better. That's what I'm trying to grow. The money is a fruit. That's just one of the fruits that comes off of fulfillment, feeling good, great relationships. Those are all the fruit that comes off of it. So for me, it's all about finding a purpose that's bigger than yourself. It doesn't have to be like Mother Teresa. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to, like Christ, I'm dying for the whole world. I'm going to carry the world's sins on my shoulders. It doesn't have to be that grand. You can just start with something a little bit more simple. Like, I just want to solve a certain kind of problem. Look at yourself. Like, what kinds of things do you like to do? What kinds of people do you like to serve? What kinds of challenges and problems fascinate and interest you? I think money is okay, but I think you're missing a huge opportunity to find something deeper and more meaningful that will fuel you for a long time, because I tell you, business is hard and you've got to have a bigger purpose. The reason that I am so long in this relationship with my life is the purpose that we have together is greater than just her making me feel good about myself and making sure that I've got a great meal to eat and that my clothing is ironed and folded. I mean, that's so shallow. We've got a greater purpose, and that's what gets us through the good times and the bad times, because that happens to all of us, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a business, whether it's friendship, whatever it is, there's going to be good and bad times. So that's my long answer to your question. Now, you're saying a lot of people are complaining about chasing money. Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, I think that money can be a little shallow. Money's not a bad thing, by the way. I think money's fantastic, and it's a great tool. But it's not a good thing to chase because it's really just stored wealth. But all right, so Grady says, don't do that stupid pink mantra, though. Okay, all right, let me see what he says. He says, frail gay men wear pink, small girls wear pink, etc. Dude, now come on, Grady. Grady, you started out so good, and now you had to go there. I don't understand why you would do that. Grady. I think that pink is a great color for men to wear. I love wearing pink, especially in the summertime. You get a little bit of a tan going, pink shirt on, warm evening, go out for beers with some friends. Pink shirt and a pair of blue jeans. I mean, you're winning. So I don't know what you're talking about, Grady. All right, let's see. Grady now says in response to this discussion, chase money until it eases the problem of not having enough, avarice, and they. not attractive. Yeah, you're right. Avarice, acquisitiveness, I think is trying to acquire too much is not good. George says, can be. Money is freedom, or at least without any money, you aren't free. Yeah, I mean, look, it depends. Money is stored wealth. So it's agency. Money gives you agency. It gives you ability to do things that you couldn't do without it. But money isn't necessarily freedom. It can be its own form of bondage. And I think if you love money, then you're just asking for trouble. Look, you can have no money, a pint of beer, a good friend, and you could be the happiest person in the world, quite frankly. So it's not all about money. All right, let's see what Dale says here. Dale says, Mike, you, my friend, still have Irish in you. You are a storytelling master. Wash hands, wash hands. Thank you, Dale. Thank you so much, my friend. I'm honorary. I would love to go to Ireland someday. I've never been there. I've been to England. I've been to Spain, France, Belgium, South Africa, Greece, Canada, Mexico. I've never been to Ireland. It's a crime. I need to go. All right. George says, there was a German movie with the saying, Geld ich nicht alles, aber ohne Geld ist alles nichts, which I have no idea what that means. George, it's something, well, I know Geld is money or gold, but that's all I got. So here we go. Here's the translation. Money isn't everything, but without money, everything is nothing. Not the best translation. Yeah, but I think I know what you're saying. And we got a couple thumbs up from Ad Besamad. Good. Hopefully that was helpful to you. I don't know. Great. You're saying I'm a slime ball? I read something out of context like a slime ball. I don't know if you're accusing me of this. Grady, help me out here. I'm a little confused. First of all, I'm scanning the comments on the side. So I'm trying to both talk to the camera, have cogent thoughts, and interact with people's comments. I may have read you out of context. Maybe somebody else. I don't know who you're talking to, but please clarify. And then when you say nice straw man, I don't know, you're talking to me, you're talking to somebody else. Buddy, I don't know what to tell you. Help me out here. Help me out. Pauline says, people don't leave companies because of money. They leave because they are unsatisfied. That's a great point. People leave for unsatisfaction around the job. They leave for bad managers. They leave for incompetence. And they also leave for, and I think this is tied to unsatisfied, they leave for being unfulfilled. Like if the work is just not fulfilling, even if the money's great. I've heard of people making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year leave their job for less money just because they want to do something that was more satisfying. They felt like I was paid all this money, but it was soul-destroying work. I just didn't enjoy it. So, Grady, I'm still waiting for you, buddy, to kind of clarify for me so I can make it right. God forbid I anger anybody. Abdesamad said, Abdesamad. Why is this so hard for me? I'm stealing insights from you, Uncle Mike. I'll make sure to reward you when I get what I want. That's what I'm here for, my friend. I freely give. You can't steal from me if I freely give. I'm giving them as best I can. And then Grady says, buddy, if you can't read when you talk to a point, you're out of touch with the timing of the conversation. Well, Grady, I don't know what to tell you. I will refund your money in full, Grady. Full. All the money you've spent to be on this podcast with me, I'm happy to refund that money because I want every customer to be completely satisfied or triple their money back. Satisfaction guaranteed. Just get in touch with my customer service department, and they will get you sorted out in no time, my friend. No time. Lars, let's see what Lars has to say. Lars, Pauline says, Grady, Mike is an honest and straightforward guy. No need to be rude. You better watch it, Grady, because if you get my friends riled up. The last stream, there was a guy that jumped in, and I think he was offended by some of the political statements I made about America versus China. And it was funny for everybody to jump in there. Everyone jumped in, and at the end, and it was to his credit, he's like, now I feel bad. He seems like a nice guy. And I just thought that was a lot of fun. So, you got to be careful with this crowd. Lars says, my grandma always said, my last shirt has no pockets and my coffin has no shelf, so why keep the money? That's really wise. We don't like to listen to older generations. We think we know everything these days because we can Google it. We don't want to hear what the old people have to say. But my goodness, the wisdom that comes from our seniors, our elders. That's just a great attitude. I want to. So Grady says now, actually keep it and give a horse. Oh, come on now. That's just, dude. Now see what I'm going to do here. This is what I'm going to do, Grady. I'm going to just block you, and then you're going to be like, I don't know what to tell you, but you're just not going to be here anymore. So I have to figure out on the software how to do that, but we'll deal with Grady later. That's just disappointing. I don't know what your problem is, but beat it. Nobody needs that nonsense here. All right, let's see what Dale says. Mike, a little bit sneaky, but if you had to market Trump, how would you do it, or could you? Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I don't know. I don't know how I'd market Trump. What I will say is right now, and I was talking about this with one of my sons this morning, and he was bringing this up, and I thought he was so right. I think that Trump is missing an opportunity right now, especially with the race issues, the Black Lives Matter movement, and the riots, the protests. I feel like Trump's being a little tone deaf. I think he has an opportunity to unify the country. I think the majority of America is not behind rioters and looters. But I think what Trump is doing, he's being so heavy-handed. It's like anybody that protests, anybody that's taking a side is a bad guy. And it's like he's just conflating the looters and rioters with the people that are protesting. And I think as a president, he's done a lot for the black community. I mean, Trump has done some prison reform things. He's done some things around equality for blacks. He's also, had the lowest unemployment for the black community in the history of the country, essentially. And so I feel like he's got a lot that he's done for the black community. And I think he has to understand, like, those are all fine, but some of the grievances that black folks have about the way they're treated in this country are real. They're real. And I don't think that most black people are saying, we want to take away from the white people what they have and make them now suffer. I think they're saying, we want a place at the table. Most people, I don't care what your skin color is, you want to be able to get a good job, you want to own a home, you want to be able to raise your kids in safety and peace. Like, people want essentially the same things. And I don't think that most people are demanding that we destroy the country. I don't think most protesters want to rip it down, burn it to the ground. There's some bad actors, and a lot of those bad actors are Bernie bros and Antifa ne'er-do-wells that are causing trouble. So for me, I would advise him right now, not so much marketing him, but I would advise him to be the great unifier. And if you were able to be the great unifier, if you could create a narrative where he's saying, look, I believe in the goodness of everybody in this country. There's just a few bad actors in here, and I actually believe that the protesters have a legitimate complaint. But I think what Trump has to do is I refuse to take this kind of black or white, and I don't mean that skin color, on or off position. It's a false dichotomy. There are a lot of good cops. There are some bad cops. There are a lot of good black people. There are some bad black people. There are a lot of good white people. There are some bad white people. I think he has an opportunity to be a little bit more nuanced and say to the country, look, I want to bring us together. There's a group of people that want to divide us. The Democrats want to divide us because that helps them in the election. I'm here to say that I believe in the goodness of the American people, the American spirit, and I think that America can create a table big enough for everyone to be at it. And here's how I want to do that. Here's how I want to bring everyone to the table. And let's stop these looters and rioters, because they're only looting and rioting the businesses of black people and the homes and buildings of the impoverished. They're hurting the people they're claiming to help. Let's stand together, united against lawlessness. But don't make this a black-white thing. Don't make this a have and have not. And I think that Trump, as a baby boomer, he's at a disadvantage. As a baby boomer, he kind of sees things through a lens that isn't necessarily relevant today. And so I have to give credit to my son, Zach. He was helping me think through some of this. But if I were to advise Trump right now, I'd say you need to take the position of being a unifier and steal the thunder of the left, the progressives, welcome the protesters, but also it's kind of like welcome them in and say, I want you to have what's right for you, but you also have to be reasonable. Say to the cops, I'm here to support you. I think you do an important job, but you have to be reasonable. Say to to the mayors, to the left, to the right, we've all got to work together on this. I think that, so I'm just kind of shooting from the cuff from the hip rather. But I think that's the opportunity for Trump, and unfortunately, I don't think he's done a good job with that. Now, I've loved other things that Trump has done. I've been a Trump supporter. I voted for Trump, and I don't see Joe Biden as a really good, viable candidate. So I'm not anti-Trump, but I'm big enough to say I think he's fallen short right now. I don't think he's done a good job with this, and I don't think that makes me an anti-Trump guy. I think that just makes me someone willing to look at it and say, hey, this is my take on it. So good question. I appreciate you asking. I'm going to jump in. Abdesamad says, the reason I asked that question because I was doing music since I was a kid and kind of switched my career to business. And sometimes I feel frustrated and I don't know how I know somehow frustration is natural. Yeah. So I guess my question, Abdesamad, is how do you use business and music together? You've gained a competency. You might not love business, but you've gained a competency in business. You've got some skills and you love music. And I would think that there's a way to take your business skills and your music, your love for music, and couple those with a purpose. What problem can you solve that's useful? What value can you create for the world with your love for music and your business skills? To me, that's where the magic lies. It's not just doing one thing or the other. It's synthesizing things together to create a new idea, a new direction. And that's strategy, my friend. When you can synthesize the unique parts of something into something new, that's innovation, that's strategy. So, let's see here. Let's take a look. Pauline says, I don't think he understood what you're saying. And this is about Grady. Grady's upset about the way I treat him. And I know you're not supposed to don't feed the trolls. I really don't understand. I'm honestly at a loss for why you're upset. And quite frankly, from when I'm done with this, I'm totally going into my feed and I'm blocking you from the channel because just the comment was just so outrageous. I'm not interested. So there's that. I don't have the time right now to figure it out, but I'll absolutely do it later. Abdesamad says, I'm making money and seeing progress, but I'm scared of failure because I don't have that passion for business, same as music. Yeah, so I guess the question is, can you find a way to integrate business and music together? And I would not get into a business that you don't have an interest in. I would not get into a business that you don't have a purpose and a drive and something deeper for. I mean, don't just do it to do it. You got to find something that goes a little deeper for you. Christian says, Trump is not in his right mind. I don't want to offend no one. Yeah, don't worry. This is cool. But me being in another country, it's hard to believe the kind of things he says. I work in government and had the opportunity to know Obama. He says when he came to Argentina, he was a kind, class act man. Trump hurts the image and power of the U.S. in the world. I totally get that. And I think I understand it. I think Trump's allure for a lot of us is we're frustrated with the institution of government, and Trump is like the proverbial bull in a china shop. And so we find a lot of the things he says offensive, troubling, embarrassing. But on another level, he seemed to have brought a willingness to dismantle some deep state stuff that, these unelected officials that seem to have all the power. I think he was willing to kind of take some of that stuff head on. And I think also his willingness to see the world through more of a healthy nationalist lens, not a negative nationalist lens, but a healthy, hey, a globalist agenda is not necessarily good for all of us. Let's be good neighbors, but let's be proud of ourselves. Let's help each other, but let's still be proud of each country and what we're capable of, and let's build our own countries. I think there's something worth exploring there. A guy, what's his name? Yaram. I forget his last name now, but he wrote a book called The Virtue of Nationalism. Hazony, I think Yoram Hazony, and a Jewish intellectual, wrote a book called The Virtue of Nationalism. Just came out a year or two ago. It's a fantastic book. Now, forget Trump, but I would highly read that. I would highly recommend you read that. It's a very good book. All right. Abdesamad says, aligning music with politics. I don't want to be manipulated by a record label in order to influence people, so I decided to switch forever. Okay. All right, man. So I guess, Pauline, we're going back and forth. Let's see what George is saying. Trump is tweeting and talking, but not working. That's simply the problem in such a situation. You know, George, I think you might be right, my friend. I think Trump, you know, like I talked about the hammer and the nail earlier, and Pauline joked about the hammer's left the chat. I think Trump is a tool, and I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. I think he's a really effective tool. And I think that tool is really good when applied to specific situations. And I think he's been good at certain things. But he's kind of a one-trick pony. I'm mixing my metaphors here. I don't think he's good at certain things. And I think this is his problem. He's so successful. Whenever you're successful in a given thing, you start to think that you can be successful in everything. Think about just the business empire that Trump has built. Then he becomes president of the most powerful country in the world. You got to imagine in his mind, he can do anything. And I think he's relying on his own innate skills, his own ability to kind of mix it up, shoot from the hip, say some, crazy things and mix it up, and it'll just all work out fine. It's what he does all the time. But sometimes that stuff doesn't work, and right now is one of those times. I don't think that Trump is a racist. I don't think that he's anti-black. I actually think he wants to see black people do well in this country, and I think he believes in free markets and opportunity, et cetera. But I think he's tone deaf right now, and I think he's relying on his old tricks, make a lot of bombastic comments, mix it up, and I think he doesn't understand necessarily how he's maybe falling short. All right, let me put this one up. Grady says, incompetency just shining through like your extended forehead. Oh, Grady, that's so funny. That's just great. Okay. I think what we're going to do is keep going here. I wish there was a way that I could, and this is my incompetence. I wish there was a way to find out how I could just get rid of Grady. But if I had a, maybe I need to set up a moderator for these chats. Somebody could just nuke them from orbit. We'll deal with them. This is great entertainment, isn't it, folks? Remember, like and subscribe for more. So let's see here. Pauline says, it must be hard for a president to listen to the right voices. So many people want to influence you. Absolutely. I think that's the truth through all of history. If you're the king, the president, the leader, lots of voices. And it's hard to know who you can trust. They act like they're there to help you, but sometimes they've got other things that they're trying to accomplish, and they manipulate you for their own benefit. Christian says, if he and his family did not make everything in China, including his ties, then I believe in his word. Well, I won't touch that one with a 10-foot pole. Abdes Samad says, I completely agree with you, Mike. My purpose in life is to help people as much as I possibly can. That's good. Yeah, and if you can focus that in a little bit, if you can find a way to say, well, what does that look like? I mean, it's fantastic to want to help people. How can you help them through music? What kinds of things can you do? What kind of problems can you solve, either for musicians or using music, or it could be all kinds of stuff. But the point being, you've got to explore that. You've got to do some creative thinking. You've got to look at the world around you and figure out where you fit in that. But I think purpose is more important than passion. I'm not saying that passion isn't good. Passion's part of the human experience. It's just not enough to fuel the longevity and hard times associated with the business. Guys, we're almost at an hour and a half. I think I'm ready to wrap up this chat. This has been a lot of fun, and I've been grateful for the discussion. Let me know what you think, maybe in the comments. Should I include this? Wait a minute. I'm not going to end yet. Pauline says, I want to find a new profession where I feel I'm helping people more. Not sure what that'll be yet. Interesting. And Pauline, I think you've shared before with us, or at least with me, what industry you work in. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, I think sometimes it's profession. Sometimes it's even the company. Like one company culture is a little different than another's. Sometimes it's the role within the company. Maybe that's what you refer to in profession. And sometimes people, it's like, I know for me, like my age group, some people say, hey, I'm ready for a complete shift. I'm in my early 50s and I'm going to stop being an accountant and I'm going to become a counselor for kids that abuse drugs, and it's like, and I know I'm going to make a quarter of what I'm making right now, but I'm going to be so much happier. So there's all kinds of legitimate ways to go about that. Dale Spooney says, Spoonley, sorry, Dale. Politics and sport, two areas to avoid talking about in the pub. I think he's a maverick that started with the sincere intentions of making America great, but has lost his way and can't stop and think. Dale, I think you're 100% right. I think you're on it. And I hope for the sake of the country that he's able to figure it out. I think that, he's done a lot of good. I also think he's had nothing but opposition from the day he got elected. I think the opposition's made a lot of noise, both the media, both other politicians, et cetera. I'm not going to be an apologist for Trump, but I do like some of the things he's done, some of the policies. By the way, Pauline says she is an electrician, was thinking of counselor or police officer. Well, hey, you're never too late. And, I guess the police could really use some help. I saw a video of some cops up in Canada. Maybe you saw this, Pauline. The teenage girl in the Star Wars costume, the stormtrooper costume outside of a pizza shop, promoting the shop owner, had her standing out at the crossroads promoting the business. And the way I don't know if they were from Alberta. I'm not sure where this was. This poor kid just weeping. They kind of slam her to the ground. It was just so disgusting. So I think, the police need good people. And there are a lot of good cops right now. I mean, I know some people, police officers are fantastic. And I've had some interaction with police that I'm not happy with, but I have to say there's been a few cops that have, issued a ticket or two and been really cool about it. There are a couple where it's like, I kind of wish I could say, hey, do you want to go grab a beer? They're just such nice people. Obviously, probably not a good thing to ask a police officer while he's on duty, but yeah, I do wish you the best. Let us know how it goes. I mean, I'd be curious to know what you decide to do if you do. And being an electrician is a good income, good work, but can be tough on the knees over time. Lars wants to know, are U.S. Americans very scared about China? Could be more powerful than U.S. in the future, economically, military? Yes, I think that's a real concern. We've been so used to being kind of the world's superpower, and to see China rising. And I think there's a lack of confidence. At one point, we probably felt like we could keep them in their place, like that's our job to do. And we could keep ourselves secure. I think we took some things for granted. And what the Chinese are good at, I have to give them credit, and we're not good at. America is not good at the long-term play. We're a very short-cycled political system. We're very immediate. We want it now. We want it to be fun. We want to have a good time. We want to make a lot of money today. We want to retire tomorrow. We're like all short-term in America. And even the way our political system's set up with every 4 years, a different administration, potentially different party taking over. The Chinese are great long-term players. They're really good at that long-term play. And so here we are in a world where America's feeling like, I don't know what the reality is, they're feeling like we're losing control. And I think it is scary on a certain level. We wonder what that world looks like when we're not the superpower. And my only concern, it's not so much that America needs to remain the superpower. I'm patriotic and I love this country. It's been great for me and my family. What I'm more concerned about is China as a superpower, their moral bearing, their morals and ethics. And you can criticize America's morals and ethics too. Don't get me wrong. But China has no problem stripping a country of all of its metal and just, imprisoning people, harvesting organs from political dissidents, and I mean, just horrible things. And it's not propaganda. This is real stuff that happens. So there's a questionable morality that the Chinese government, at least, and maybe the society embraces, that's more concerning for me. If that's a superpower, it's not a big deal when it's some little developing nation and you go, yeah, they really are terrible. Okay, there's not a big influence unless you live in that country. But when they become a superpower, it's a little concerning to say, well, what does that do to the world we live in? America at least puts a face of morals and ethics and actually does a hell of a lot for the world. A lot of donations, a lot of aid, a lot of good works to help other countries. Say what you will about the CIA and the meddling in other governments. I get that. But yeah, and Pauline makes this comment, a planned economy is always easier to plan in the long run. That's true. The only problem with a planned economy and just strategic planning in general in business is you never can plan for the unknown, and that's what the future is. The future is always unknown. So I do wonder, this is why the Soviet Union didn't do well. I do wonder, and the Chinese have kind of liberalized their economy, meaning they've gone more of a they've gone more of a like free market / communism model. I'm not even sure what to call that, but they've had to liberalize a little bit because the total planned economy, centrally planned, just wasn't working. So yeah. Dale, wow, I really respect your honesty, my friend. Well, thank you, Dale. I appreciate that. I've really enjoyed having you in the chat today. I appreciate it. Christian says, but fighting with your allies is not good policy to keep China in line. Why fighting with NATO? Yeah, Christian, that's above my pay grade. I'm not gonna comment on that. Not because I'm hiding my comments. I just don't have a thought on that. I do see a couple things. I think so. NATO. I think there's been some issues where I think America has felt some of its NATO partners, like Germany, et cetera, have wanted it both ways. Meaning, we're going to do what's good for Germany first, and that's cool. But we're going to do things that might hurt America or might misalign with the NATO agreements. We're going to do like Angela Merkel's allowing of all these. The immigrant flood that happened many years ago. I mean, I think there's some things that the NATO allies have done that have frustrated what America and NATO is supposed to do. And yet, on the other hand, America feels like we're supposed to pick up the bill and carry all the weight for this. And I think sometimes Trump's treatment of the allies is his way of trying to get them in line to do what he wants or what he thinks is good for America. You can argue, we can agree that maybe his tactics are destructive or not helping. But I think to blame it all on America or all on Trump is insincere. I think that these other countries like France, Germany, they have to take some responsibility because they're not willing necessarily to say, look, whatever America wants, we'll do. And why should they? Why should one country give up its sovereignty to another country? So I think the U.S. is spending a ton of money. Pauline just said this. So the U.S. is spending a ton of money, and it has to look and say, well, what do we get for that money? And if I have allies that are demanding and begging for more of that money, and they want more from us, but they're not willing to carry their load or to help us in ways that we want them or think that they should help, then we're going to be antagonistic to try to get them to the table to do what we want to do. I think that's what's going on. And I understand if you're on the other side of it, if you're in Austria, if you're in Germany, it looks different. And I get that. Look, when I watch a soccer match, football, baby, when I watch a soccer match, and I'm a Barcelona fan, don't hate me for that if you guys don't love Barcelona. I don't watch EPL, but whenever Barcelona commits a foul, I'm always like, he just came in a little hard on the ball. He didn't mean to hurt that guy. That slide tackle was clean. That guy's the opponent. He's rolling around faking it. But when someone fouls Barcelona, in my mind, it's always evil intent. They're trying to break Iniesta's leg. Oh my gosh, they're fouling Messi. They're on purpose. They're yanking him to the ground. These guys are cheating. So there's this lens. When it's your team, you always feel what you do is okay. Oh, we didn't mean to be too rough. It wasn't meant to be a foul. And when the other guy does it, it's always the worst. And, I think that's instructive for all of us. I'm going to be sympathetic to my country. I try to be intellectually honest, but I can't help it. I'm going to be sympathetic to my country. And I think the people criticizing America, they probably have legitimate criticisms. But you also have to know you're looking through a lens too, and your lens isn't necessarily right. I don't think any of our lenses are perfect. And so we just have to understand that we're biased. We're biased towards our own countries typically. And but I will say this, I just met a new neighbor today. We had folks move in. We on this 5-acre property, I've got a bunch of, we're in a suburban area, so we're on the original farm for this area. We have the remaining 5 acres. We've been here about 5-6 years. And then we've got all these houses around us. It's suburban. So a young guy just moved in next door. He's from Afghanistan. He was an interpreter for the American military, then came here, served in the American military. Now he's a citizen. He lives here. He's brought some of his family over. He's a 29-year-old guy, owns a house, owns a car, has a business, and he's working on his 3rd degree. I mean, that's a common story in America. So you can say what you want about America. I totally get it. You can say what you want about Trump. But there is something special about what America provides for people coming in. There's an opportunity here that people the world over still recognize as something special and something to be desired. We have a lot of flaws. Again, I'm not going to pretend like America's flawless. We've got some real flaws and some long-term concerns. I look at our country and I wonder, how will it hold up over time culturally? But on the other hand, the whole NATO thing, I started this off with, I have no comment. I just spent 15 minutes talking about it. I guess I am a liar. Shame on me. Yeah. So let's see. Pauline says, I'm from Canada. Our security is because the States, 100%. Yeah. And you know what? We love having Canada as our northern neighbor. By the way, I'm 30 miles. If I could swim 30 miles, I could swim to Canada. I'm on the other side of Lake Ontario from Toronto. But we love having such a stable, peaceful, good neighbor above us. Like Americans and Canadians, they make fun of each other. We've got a little bit of sibling rivalry. Canadians like to look down their nose at how uncouth and how unpolite and uncivil Americans are. And we like to make fun of Canadians about how proper and polite they are, et cetera. At the end of the day, we both benefit from this neighborhood, being neighbors. Canada is a trustworthy neighbor. They're not mounting troops on our border. They're not encouraging people to smuggle illegal, illicit product and material back and forth. We trust Canada. Canada, I think, trusts us. It's great when you've got this great neighbor. We're not trying to be Canada. Canada's not trying to be us. I think we both respect and love each other for the beautiful things that each country has and provides to the world. We love your beer, and we love Rush, Geddy Lee and the gang, Alex Lifeson, and even Peter McKinnon on YouTube. Yeah, but what a benefit to have a neighbor like that and to share a border with with a good neighbor. So I think that it's a mutual thing. All right, Christian says, but paying more always was the trade-off that America made to have the prime role. Yeah, I get that. I'm just saying it's not so cut and dry. I think there's some nuances there. And I think it doesn't matter if you have the prime role and you're paying more. After a while, if you feel that your partners, it's not just the paying part. I think the money is a big sore spot. But if your partners aren't partnering with you, if it's all about Germany and France getting the benefit because they're in NATO, but America just has to keep giving, then America says, well, what's our benefit? What's our benefit? If we're having to go it alone anyway, like how much is Germany, how much is France, how much are these other countries in NATO going to step up to the plate when times are tough? How much do we align making strategic decisions? How much do we align making tactical decisions? There's been all kinds of acrimony and frustration for both sides. So it's one thing to say, well, it's your job to pay more because you want to be in charge. But it's another thing to say, yeah, but we're paying more to be in charge, but you're actually working against us anyway. So at some point, a country has to say, well, why are we doing this? Because at the end of the day, this is an old model for an old world problem. The Soviet Union is no more. Communism in Europe, in the Eastern Europe, is not a thing anymore. You've got the Czech Republic. You've got Russia. I mean, you've got the balkanization of everything. I don't understand why NATO is such a critical component anymore. That's what a lot of people are asking. And so in the end, you got this acrimony. When you've got Germany and France saying, we don't need America telling us what to do anymore. We're going to do our own thing. We're going to do things that are in our interest but actually hurt America. Well, then you shouldn't be surprised when America turns around. Now, I don't like the way that Trump is doing it, but it shouldn't be a surprise when America turns around and goes, hey, we don't like this, and we pay a lot. So, and Christian, I know you're saying I'm not criticizing America. I know you're not. You're talking about, I think what you're talking about is the dynamic and the different players and the attitudes, and I get that. And I hope you don't mind. I like arguing this a little bit. I like discussing it. To me, this doesn't put any strain on our relationship. It doesn't put any strain on this channel or the discussion. I think it's healthy. I'm not looking for everybody to agree with me. You asked me what I thought. I'm shooting from the hip and telling you what I think. I may be wrong, and I know that, and I don't have a problem just throwing that out there. George says the NATO is about defending the member states and not some wars in the Middle East and all over the world. That's what most Europeans don't want their tax money to be spent on. I agree. And quite frankly, a lot in America don't want to have to spend our tax money on all that kind of nonsense either. We'd like to say, let's stop getting involved everywhere. We in Austria have the best deal. We're surrounded by NATO states and Switzerland, so we get the security without paying a euro for it. You guys are winning. It's the Austrian model. They talk about Austrian economics. You guys got it figured out, my friend. Good for you. Hey, Pauline, thanks for joining. It was great to see you, and thanks for participating. Thanks for making me laugh so hard. That was great. Take it easy. GFG's in the house. He says, well, in the UK and the US, socialism is a cancer, which is essentially communism. But yeah, let's take down the EU a little bit more. Nice mustache. Why, thank you, my friend. It's no wax in it today. Sometimes I'll throw a little wax in it and get it kind of curving up. I didn't have the time to do that. I had to hit the shower after mowing the Manor Estate lawn and didn't have time to pretty up too much. But thank you. Thanks for joining. Lars says, Germany thinks development assistance for crisis areas should also count to the 2% NATO security expenses. Maybe helping critical states makes the world safer than spanning $20 billion a year for weapons. Yeah, I mean, I got you, man. And again, I'm kind of painting with very broad strokes. This stuff is nuanced. It's subtle. It takes a keen mind and a lot of time to really understand it. And I'm looking at it through the lens of being an American sitting in America, and it's different. I see it differently because there's a lens I'm looking through. I'm not claiming that lens is 100% correct. I'm just seeing it through that lens. I'm also not saying I think I'm wrong. I'm just saying I'm smart enough to know I don't know. Guys, this has been a fantastic discussion. I love you guys. I love these discussions, and I'm grateful for this time. I was saying before as I was getting ready to wrap up, do me a favor. Let me know, do you think for the podcast that I should end the podcast and then continue this discussion like we did today? Or do you think I should include this discussion in the podcast? I'd like to know what you think. But guys, thank you so much. If you haven't done so already, throw me a like, subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you around. I love these discussions, love the comments. We'll interact with you there. Hope you guys are doing great. I hope you have a great week coming up, and I'll catch you all in the next live stream. Cheers.